Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on the royal family. We provide you with the exciting news royal bombshell Catherine unveils dossier on Camilla at Emergency Palace Summit. ERUPTS, a high-level family meeting, was held at Buckingham Palace to talk about and fix what aides called internal misunderstandings. It allegedly turned into a dramatic and important fight that changed the way the British monarchy works. At the end of the meeting, which was attended by King Charles III, Queen Consort Camilla, and the Prince and Princess of Wales, the Princess of Wales, Catherine, showed what she says is documentary evidence of a planned effort by the Queen Consort to damage her reputation and standing within the royal family. The immediate effects of this meeting have been felt across the institution, leading to a strong response from the king and a strong public reaction that analysts have likened to times in the past when royal rifts became public. In the weeks and months leading up to the meeting, many who worked at the palace said that things were quite tense. The royal family had to deal with a lot of public relations problems and internal tensions that were becoming worse. The summit was called in part to formally deal with these issues, to talk about procedure, how to plan public events, and how to work together to keep the family's public image strong. The official agenda was mostly on practical issues, such who would represent the king at certain events, how tours would be planned, and how domestic duties would be rearranged to reflect shifting roles. But beyond these procedural issues was a deeper layer of unresolved personal grudges and jockeying for dominance that had turned into a long-term power battle in royal circles. King Charles led the gathering with the hope that everyone would be calm and orderly. The Queen Consort sat next to him with several of her top servants behind her. The Prince and Princess of Wales sat across from them. For a lot of the early proceedings, everybody stuck to the formal timetable. Aides took notes while officials spoke about planned projects. But as the conference was coming to an end, the Princess of Wales stepped in a way that was quite different from what was anticipated. She put a leather-bound folder in front of the king, and everyone else that had claims, she said, showed a purposeful attempt to downplay her participation. People who saw it said it was very quiet. She argued that the data she provided showed not just administrative supervision, but also a planned effort by the Queen Consort's staff to limit her power. That admission was the end of years of quiet tension, turning a pattern of passive exclusion into an aggressive and public reckoning. The events that followed would put both the personal connections and the institution's ability to handle a major internal crisis in a very public era to the test. A history of hidden tensions. To understand how important what happened at the Buckingham Palace Summit was, you need to know what was going on between the Princess of Wales and the Queen Consort. People have mostly said that their relations in public are polite and professional. However, insiders close to the royal family have long said that things are more difficult and sometimes tense when the cameras are off. Insiders say that this conflict comes from the different paths each woman took to fame and the different ways they interacted with the media and the public. These elements affected how each woman was seen and how they handled their jobs. Catherine Middleton, now the Princess of Wales, has been in the public eye from the beginning of her public existence. Others instantly admired her because she was calm, pleasant, and comfortable in front of others. For a lot of people, she was a sign of change in the monarchy, someone who could combine respect for tradition with a more approachable way of being. People started comparing her to the late Diana, Princess of Wales, and these comparisons continued affecting both public opinion and media stories. These similarities helped explain why Catherine was so popular, but they also added to the tension within the institution, as comparing her to someone who is very important in the national memory may make relationships and hierarchies more difficult. In contrast, Camilla's journey to public acceptance was long and in many ways painful. For years, many were quite critical and suspicious of her past connection with King Charles. Over time, via a well-planned long-term strategy, she rehabilitated her public image, making herself seem like a loyal follower of the Queen and a working royal who was involved in charity work. However, she did not get the same level of popular devotion as Diana or later Catherine. According to palace insiders, the difference in how the public and media saw the two ladies is one of the main reasons for the tension being visible. And popular are not just personal successes, but also important assets in an organization that depends on public goodwill. Insiders say that this difference in how people reacted to them led to a quiet but ongoing rivalry. As Catherine's public image developed, Camilla is said to have been worried about being eclipsed in the royal hierarchy. Sources said that the anxiety showed itself in a number of measures that were frequently subtle enough to be blamed on bureaucratic mistakes or the difficulties of royal procedure. Former staff members, for instance, said that invitations for the princess to important planning meetings were often late or sent to the wrong place. This meant that choices concerning important royal events were made without her direct participation. Public explanations for these absences said they were due to Catherine's choice to concentrate on family or schedule problems, but many who were closest to the houses saw a pattern of purposeful exclusion. The Queen Consort reportedly asked the Princess of Wales if she was ready for more demanding public roles during internal briefings, saying that she needed more time to grow into her position. These interventions were framed as advice meant to protect both the person and the institution, but they often had the effect of limiting Catherine's chances to make high-profile appearances or take part in certain ceremonial duties. Over time, those who worked in the palace saw that the princess's duties were being moved about more and more, and she was becoming less visible at official events. People used to take her presence and actions for granted, but now they were being handled, transferred, or regulated more and more. People outside the royal family could think that the princess was stepping aside because she had a young family to take care of. But people within the royal family knew that she was making choices that made her less powerful, which made the story of her voluntary retreat more convoluted. People who know about the situation say that this strategy of quiet control even affected Catherine's staff. It was said that her team's suggested projects were held up by red tape, and some staff members felt that their authority was being challenged. If these strategies are described appropriately, they aren't openly aggressive on their own, but they might build up over time to cause professional stress and personal shame. People say that the princess, who had worked hard to build a public image based on calm engagement, handled these pressures with restraint, following a long-standing royal rule: never complain, never explain. Her husband, Prince William, knew what was going on and told her to be patient, stressing the importance of stability and the long-term view that comes with getting ready for future responsibilities. But the strain that lasted for a long time had an effect. Catherine's silence was not a sign of passive acceptance. Instead, it was a sign of strategic patience. She started quietly keeping a detailed private record of events, conversations, written communications, and instances of marginalization that would eventually serve as the basis for her claims. That slow buildup of paperwork showed that she had limitations on how much she could take. The finding of a damning document. Finding one folder was the tipping moment that changed years of silent tolerance into an aggressive fight. According to those who know what happened, the incident took place one night at the Wales' home. The Princess of Wales saw a leather-bound folder on a desk in her private office as she was waiting for Prince William to come back from a meeting with his father. The folder had a clear label that said, "For His Majesty's eyes only." This is a normal way to mark anything that is private and meant for the king's perusal. She opened it because she was becoming more and more uneasy, and because she was curious about what the label said. The things in the folder were worse than she had thought they would be. It had an official briefing paper made by top advisors close to the Queen Consort that was meant for King Charles to read before the family meeting. The material wasn't just a bunch of random notes. It was more like a strategic plan that was deliberately written, organized, and meant to affect decision-making at the highest level. The memo made a case for greatly limiting the Princess of Wales's public position and changing the story about how well she would be able to handle future duties. The briefing gave a rather harsh review of Catherine on its first pages. It said that her popularity and modern manner might be a threat to the stability of the institution, saying that her modern way of doing things would not fit with what the monarchy needs. One paragraph said that her attitude would make her less fit for the harsh scrutiny that comes with senior royal duties, meaning that her perceived softness might threaten long-term stability. The plan also suggested specific steps, such as limiting ceremonial obligations and solo trips abroad, which had been important ways for Catherine to be seen across the world, and changing the public-facing tasks she was given. Catherine also saw clear strategies for changing the stories that the media told as she read on. The paper allegedly suggested leveraging press narrative by secretly briefing some journalists and pushing opinion articles that would make her judgment seem questionable. The goal as it was written was to change how people saw her so that she was seen as a well-meaning but ultimately secondary figure, which would make the queen consort the most important woman next to the king. In other words, the plan was to change the public debate in a planned way such that the main female figure in the monarchy was regarded differently. The princess was apparently particularly horrified by the handwritten remarks in the margins, which she is believed to have recognized as the queen consort's handwriting. People said that these marginal notes were more plain and straightforward than the printed text. One note next to a section about media strategy said, "Plant stories to confirm weakness." Another note in a part about the royal children said, "Avoid involving the young ones for now, but keep options open should the need arise." The idea that members of the royal family, including the children, might be used as tools in a public relations strategy was, according to those accounts, the worst thing that could happen. Catherine closed the folder that night because she was quite upset. The next morning, she called a junior assistant whose name was on the list of those who got the document. When shown the information, the assistant allegedly became noticeably upset and, after some delay, sadly admitted that the queen consort had been in charge of writing the document and had told staff to get it ready for the king to read. Catherine didn't feel any better after hearing the aide's explanation that they thought their acts were for the good of the family. Catherine gave Prince William the folder when he got back that day and told him what she had uncovered. Sources say that his response was a mix of extreme wrath and a desire to protect. Reports say that he saw the paper not just as an assault on his wife's character, but also as a real danger to the constitutional order he would have to protect in the future. He informed her, "She's crossed a line this time," and then said, "If they want war, they'll have it, and you won't fight it alone." This made it clear that their intimate relationship will now be matched by a public attitude. Because of this, the choice to bring the issue up at the family summit was not made on the spur of the moment. It was a planned move to attract attention to a planned marginalization and force an official response. Conflict at the summit. The meeting at Buckingham Palace started as planned, with discussions on forthcoming tours, philanthropic goals, and family finances. At first, there was little sign of the turmoil that would soon break out. King Charles led the first debate in a businesslike way. As is usual at these kinds of ceremonial events, courtiers and attendants sat on the edges and wrote down what was said. The Princess of Wales didn't say anything for the first hour. She looked calm on the outside and didn't show any signs of the emotional burden she was carrying. At the same time, the Queen Consort laid forth her plans for updating palace communications and advised a restructuring of staff duties. These plans now seemed to be part of a larger strategy to strengthen power, given what Catherine had learned. The Princess of Wales spoke out as the king was about to end the meeting. "There is something," she declared clearly, "that I cannot allow to remain unaddressed." Her intervention brought the proceedings to a sudden halt. She got up gently and put the leather-bound folder on the polished table, making sure that everyone could see it clearly. Then she said something. She didn't speak in a loud voice, but she did speak in a steady rhythm and with clear intent as she went over the document's contents. She read parts that made it clear that there was a strategy to lessen her position, plans to cut down on her ceremonial duties, plans to cut back on her abroad representation, and clear ways to spread stories in the media that made her seem too soft for a bigger role. As she read the notes that she thought the Queen Consort had written, which included parts about the royal children, everyone in the room gasped, exchanged looks, and the mood became more and more disbelieving. Reports say that King Charles stayed still for much of the event. As the details and depth of the accusations became clear, observers said he looked pale. People say that at one point he closed his eyes for a short while, as if he were taking in a reality that couldn't be hidden anymore. The Queen Consort's calmness, which she had worked hard to maintain and show to the world, started to break down. At first, she tried to minimize the claims by calling them a ridiculous misunderstanding and said that the plans were just part of normal strategic planning. But Catherine would not be stopped. As she kept showing the proof, her voice became a little louder. She kept the folder open on the table so everyone could see it. She looked from Camilla to the king, to the other people in the room, making it clear that she wanted them to take responsibility and admit what the records showed. As Catherine spoke about the years of little insults and planned isolation that came before the discovery, the Queen Consort's shields broke down and she became clearly angry. The facade of royal serenity fell away completely, exposing a look of pure anger. For a minute, she seemed to be at a loss for words. The political games she had played in public life for so long were useless now that the documentary evidence against her was so clear. Prince William sat at the end of the table in quiet, staring at his wife. People who saw him said his face showed intense adoration. There was a long, heavy stillness when Catherine stopped talking. William was the one who broke the silence. He responded, "Bravo, Catherine," in a voice that was both calm and strong. That two-word affirmation meant a lot in the world of royal procedure. It was a clear and public statement of loyalty and confirmation of his wife's position that was aimed not just at the Queen Consort, but also at his father's leadership. William's brief praise was a perfect way to terminate the moment and signify a point of no return in an institution that values decorum and caution. The family's carefully maintained cohesiveness had been broken. A princess who refused to tolerate systemic marginalization had openly broken the tacit standards that governed royal conduct. The result was a quick and deep test of whether the monarchy could survive an internal crisis of this size at a time when the public could see everything right away. The aftermath. A palace in chaos, witnesses said that what happened after the transaction was really chaotic. The Queen Consort, who had been trying to keep her cool, lost it and started yelling. She accused Catherine of being very disobedient and of putting the monarchy in a position to be publicly humiliated for no reason. She criticized the princess for what she saw as irresponsible actions, driven by selfishness and a lack of appreciation for the chances the institution had given her. "You don't know what you've done," she is claimed to have said, her voice quivering with wrath. William then became the target of her rage. She said he was violating his family duties, letting his wife do what she wanted, and letting the crown be insulted in public. She wanted to know how the heir to the kingdom could let such a violation of rules and discipline happen. People who were there said that Prince William did not take the bait. He stayed sitting, looking like he was quietly defying the rules. His quiet stood in stark contrast to the Queen Consort's growing fury, and it was a clear choice not to partake in the vocabulary of blame. Many of the palace officials had spent their whole lives keeping the royal families happy, so they tried to calm things down. In the tense environment, appeals of "Your Majesty, please," and offers to end the conference were apparently rejected. King Charles, who had seemed shocked by the first reports, finally stood up and called for calm. He raised a hand in the air, which is a common way to try to bring order back. Camilla, on the other hand, was angry with him too, calling him weak and saying he didn't defend her from what she called a public execution. The king is said to have pulled back, lowered his hand, and sunk back into his seat as his wife became very angry. He was a spectator as the family's public-facing unity fell apart. The conference ended without a decision, which made the family seem broken and made the palace feel tense with anxiety. The topic of who really had power in the monarchy, which had been the subject of private conjecture for a long time, was suddenly a public issue. A shift in allegiance and a public eruption. The conference was supposed to be private, but news of the fight got out to the press within hours. Early accounts were careful and used unidentified palace sources, but the general pattern of events quickly came together. The Princess of Wales had approached the Queen Consort and given her papers that supposedly proved a scheme to overthrow her. The story traveled across Britain and the globe, causing a lot of public controversy. In the digital era, social media was the main place where people reacted. The hashtag #BravoCatherine became quite popular, and people on many platforms praised the princess for being brave enough to speak out about the issue. The number of posts, shares, and comments on the news online made it bigger in real time, and established media outlets immediately followed suit. Most people who spoke out in public were in favor of Catherine, seeing her as a principled person who had the courage to question an unclear institutional procedure. People quickly and often compared her to the late Princess of Wales. People on social media and in the news compared Catherine's resistance to past problems in the royal family, saying that she was following in the footsteps of other women who had pushed back against the monarchy's internal rules. Editorials and internet threads put pictures of Catherine next to pictures of the late Princess of Wales, and stories that stressed continuity with a public figure who was both populist and sympathetic became more popular. For a lot of people, this story struck a chord because it tapped into long-held emotional ties to the royal family that were based on personal history and national feelings. The public response to Queen Consort Camilla was quick and nasty. The goodwill she had built up over many years seemed to disappear quickly as the news came out. Her approval ratings, which were already lower than those of other senior royals, are said to have plummeted a lot. People who had formerly backed her now said they were worried or distanced themselves from her. The incident brought out old resentments about her past and changed the way people spoke about her in public. Even while many of the details were still up for debate, the strength of public opinion changed the media landscape in ways that were hard for the palace's communication staff to manage. The palace itself got a lot of letters. While a small number of people wrote asking for private peace and devotion to tradition, most of the communications, it was said, clearly supported Catherine and called for the Queen consort to be held accountable. For an organization that is used to carefully controlling stories and keeping a measured public posture, the surge of public opinion was a new and powerful factor. The people had used the social license that gave the royal family legitimacy as a judge in what had previously been palace business. The king's intervention and a new royal order, King Charles, had to do something. When he saw that his family was falling apart, there was a public uproar, and there was a chance of a long-term institutional catastrophe. In the days just after the meeting, the palace was quiet. Public events were canceled, remarks were held back, and it seemed like they were trying to deal with the consequences from the communications. The king, on the other hand, had a number of secret meetings in an effort to bring back stability. The Princess of Wales was the first person he met with privately at Windsor Castle, which was quieter than Buckingham Palace. Sources close to her said the king apologized and admitted that he had not been paying enough attention. He is said to have conceded in that private meeting that he should have acted sooner, noting that she deserved protection and had not gotten it. People close to the princess said that the king's words were less about asking for forgiveness and more about validating her feelings. They recognized that she had been wronged and that the institutional inertia that allowed the marginalization to continue was at least in part the monarch's fault. Aides said that the king and queen consort's meeting was more contentious. Charles has been a strong supporter of Camilla for years, protecting her from criticism and promoting her public position. But the problem was so urgent and dangerous to the monarchy's reputation that the king had to establish definite limits. He is said to have given an ultimatum: the conduct that led to the briefing paper must stop, and any further scheming, media manipulation, or personal vendettas disguised as strategy would not be permitted. The message was clear: she could only stay queen consort if she changed her behavior in a way that could be seen. The king's firmness showed that keeping the institutions stable was more important to him than personal allegiance. After the ultimatum, urgent steps were taken by the administration. Orders were sent to put a stop to the queen consort's public appearances, at least for a while, and her name was taken off of several official calendars. The royal family canceled or moved planned activities to other members of the family. The palace staff, who had long been influenced by the queen consort, were called into action to carry out her seclusion. This was a big change from how they had previously acted with respect. The palace didn't say anything about most of the speculations that spread in the days that followed, but there were unsubstantiated murmurs in legal and courtier circles about the potential of a formal separation. The palace strongly denied any such speculation. Prince William spoke to his father in private during a later meeting. While the specifics of their meeting are still private, officials said that the prince thanked the king for admitting that what Catherine had said was true. Some people inside thought the moment showed that father and son were trying to make up. Charles saw that William was faithful not just to his family, but also to the rules that regulate the monarchy's public function. The interaction hinted to a delicate reshaping of allegiance that may, if maintained, settle the institution's internal conflicts instead of making them worse. A new standing has emerged. The Princess of Wales did not come out of these incidents any less strong. In fact, both private and public opinions showed that her status had risen. After the first fight, William and his wife departed the castle. It is said that William held his wife's hand and told her discreetly that he was proud of her. There were visible changes in how the palace worked that went along with these close gestures. People who had been careful around the princess before started to treat her with more respect. In strategic talks, her points of view were no longer just courteous suggestions. They were actively sought after as important advice. This shift in treatment meant a big change in her power. She went from being someone whose duties could be reduced to becoming a key player in deciding the destiny of the monarchy. The conference, which was called to deal with internal conflicts in a way that wouldn't disgrace the public, ended up doing the opposite. The meeting didn't settle a disagreement. Instead, it showed its shape and led to a shift of authority. For many people within and outside the court, the incident made Catherine's position stronger not just as a future queen consort, but also as a key moral and strategic voice in the monarchy's growth. In secret corridors of power talks that had earlier supported the image of her as a consort in waiting, changed into talks that recognized her potential as a strong leader. People who were thinking about the future of the institution started to talk more publicly about the idea of Queen Catherine, which had previously only been whispered about. This change shows how family relations, which used to be limited to palace walls and private letters, may have quick and far-reaching repercussions in a time when everyone is always watching. The summit's goal of bringing people together and finding common ground was overshadowed by a new internal reality, a monarchy where the distribution of ceremonial obligations, media narratives, and personal loyalty is determined not only by internal discussion, but also by public opinion. It's not clear whether this recalibration will lead to sustainable institutional regeneration or a lengthy battle for power, but the summit was a turning point that revealed long-simmering tensions and set the stage for a new power structure. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and share it.